My boyfriend's friends laughed. Why does she dress like a broke intern? While he stayed silent, I just smiled. Got it. I took a slow sip of my drink and let them laugh. Seconds later, the man my boyfriend had spent all week hoping to impress walked in, looked straight at me, and changed the entire room without meaning to. My name is Sienna Vale. I'm 32 years old. And if you had asked me before that Christmas party what kind of betrayal cuts deepest, I probably would have said cheating. I would have been wrong. There's something colder than infidelity. It's the moment someone you love decides your dignity is a fair price for social approval. I met Adrian Mercer about a year and a half earlier through mutual friends in Seattle. He was funny in a low-key way, handsome without being vain about it, and worked in social media marketing for an agency that handled brand campaigns for lifestyle and tech clients. In the beginning, what I liked most about him was how unperformed he seemed. He didn't act impressed by flashy people. He didn't talk like every dinner was an audition. He felt easy. Grounded. Safe. At least that's what I told myself. What Adrian didn't fully know, because I almost never told anyone unless I had to, was that 3 years earlier, I'd sold my AI startup for enough money that I could have retired before 30 if I'd wanted to. I didn't want to. Not because I loved hustle culture or needed another headline. I just liked building things. Quietly. Carefully. Without turning my life into a showroom. And the bigger reason I kept my money private had nothing to do with modesty and everything to do with damage. My father made a fortune in tech when I was growing up. Overnight, our house turned into a museum of things nobody needed and nobody even seemed to enjoy. My mother started treating luxury like moral proof. People circled us differently. Conversations changed. Every birthday gift came with invisible strings. Every relationship started sounding like a negotiation. By the time my parents divorced, I had stopped believing money merely revealed character. Sometimes it rewrote it. So when my own exit happened, I made myself one promise. I would live in a way that still let me see people clearly. I kept my Capitol Hill apartment. I drove my old Subaru. I bought clothes because they were comfortable, not because they announced anything. And when Adrian and I started dating, I let him assume I was doing what I usually said I did. Consulting, product strategy, early stage advisory work. None of that was a lie. It just wasn't the whole picture. I also kept my newer company deliberately quiet, and after the sale of my first business, I'd stepped back from interviews enough that most people outside tech circles didn't connect my name to anything immediately. For a while, Adrian seemed like proof that my caution was working. He never complained when we grabbed tacos instead of reservations. He didn't care that I liked neighborhood coffee shops better than rooftop bars. He used to kiss my forehead and say he liked that I was low maintenance. But people are rarely only themselves. Sometimes they are also the company they keep. Adrian's friend group had a polished kind of cruelty I didn't recognize at first because it wore such expensive clothes. They smiled while measuring, complimented while ranking. Every dinner with them felt like walking through a room full of hidden judges. Talia worked in investment banking and had somehow turned her boyfriend's compensation package into a personality trait. Mira was married to a surgeon and spoke about his schedule the way other people talked about medals. They tracked status the way meteorologists tracked pressure systems. Apartments, watches, hotels, promotions, reservations, and relationships too. At first the digs were subtle. Oh, Sienna, your car is kind of vintage cute. You still live in that building? Honestly, Seattle rent for small places is criminal. That jacket is thrifted, right? Wait, don't be offended. You pull it off. Adrian used to laugh them away, or I thought he did. Looking back, what he was really doing was learning their language. A few months before the Christmas party, I noticed the shift. Why don't we ever do anything nice? He asked one night while we were putting groceries away. Mira and David just got back from Napa. Talia's boyfriend booked them this insane place in Aspen, and we're still splitting grocery costs like grad students. I looked over at him, a carton of eggs in my hand. We can do nice things, I said. I just thought we were doing what we liked. He shrugged, but it wasn't casual. It was edged. With what money, Sienna? You consult for tiny startups and wear sneakers to dinner. I laughed lightly because the sentence was so absurd it barely registered at first. Money isn't really the issue, I told him, but I could tell from his face that he had already built a version of my life in his head. And once people decide who you are from the outside, they start filtering every choice through that conclusion. The Christmas party happened the following week. Adrian's agency had booked an upscale restaurant in Belltown. Soft amber lighting, polished glassware, the kind of place where people lowered their voices to sound more important. On the Uber ride there, he adjusted his jacket twice, checked his phone, then looked at me. "Just try to fit in tonight, okay?" he said. I turned my head slowly. "Try to fit in?" He gave a short laugh, like I was taking it too seriously. "These people matter for my career, and Stellan Briggs might stop by. I just don't want anything weird." Anything weird? I stared out the window after that and watched holiday lights smear across the glass. Something in me had already started going cold. The party was exactly what I expected, and somehow worse. Young professionals performing success at one another, end-of-year bonuses, Cabo, Jackson Hole, venture rounds, engagement rings. The air smelled like expensive perfume and insecurity. Adrian barely stayed beside me for the first 10 minutes. The moment we arrived, he drifted toward Talia and Mira, and I followed more slowly, holding a drink I didn't want. I told myself to endure it. Smile, be gracious, leave early if I had to. Then Talia looked me up and down and said, loud enough for people at the next table to hear, "Adrian, be honest. Is this her minimalist phase, or does she actually dress like a broke intern on purpose?" Mira laughed first, then two other women. Then Adrian smiled. Not a forced smile, not an uncomfortable one, a real one. Something in my chest tightened so sharply it almost felt clean. I could have answered, I could have embarrassed them, I could have said something elegant and devastating, but I wanted to see what he would do if I gave him room to choose. He chose wrong. Adrian lifted his glass and said, "Sienna's very committed to the whole understated thing." More laughter. "Understated?" Talia said. "That's generous." Mira tilted her head toward him. "You are way too handsome to be living this casually. Honestly, when are you going to level up?" Adrian glanced at me, then back at them, and instead of shutting it down, he let the moment breathe. He let it become real. I remember every detail after that with humiliating clarity. The heat of the glass in my hand, the bite of carbonation at the back of my throat, the soft pulse of music above us, and Adrian, my boyfriend, standing there while his friends treated me like a temporary embarrassment he simply hadn't upgraded yet. Then he said the sentence I still think about sometimes when I can't sleep. "She's sweet," he told them, almost apologetically. "But yeah, not exactly the same league." That was the moment it ended for me. He just didn't know it yet. I smiled, nodded once, took a sip of my drink. Got it. And then the energy in the room changed. People near the entrance started turning. The restaurant quieted in small ripples. I followed their gaze and saw Stellan Briggs walking in with two board members and a senior director I recognized from prior meetings. Stellan was the CEO of one of Seattle's largest tech companies. For the past 2 months, we'd been discussing a major partnership for my new platform. Brilliant, intense, generous in the rare way powerful people sometimes are when they no longer need to posture. He scanned the room once, then his face lit up. He started walking directly toward me. "There she is," he called out warmly. "The woman I've been trying to pin down all week." Adrian stopped breathing beside me. Stellan reached our group, smiling like seeing me. There was the best surprise of his night. "Sienna," he said. "Perfect timing. Are you ready to make my board stop bothering me?" And suddenly every person at that table was looking at me like they had never seen me before. For one suspended second, nobody spoke. Talia's smile froze first. Then Mira's. Then Adrian slowly turned toward me. The confusion on his face so complete, it almost would have been funny if it hadn't come 3 minutes too late. I set my glass down carefully on the nearest tray because suddenly I didn't trust my hand not to crush it. Stellan either didn't notice the tension at our table or noticed it and chose mercy. He clasped my shoulder lightly and said, "I was starting to think your assistant was screening me on purpose. I've been trying to get 15 minutes with you since Tuesday." That got more than one person's attention. My assistant. Tuesday. The way he said it made it sound obvious that I belonged in rooms none of them had imagined me entering. I gave him a small smile. "You'll survive, Stellan." He laughed. "That depends. My board won't, if you keep making them wait. They're fully on board, by the way." I could feel Adrian staring at me now. Not looking. Staring. Like if he focused hard enough, he could force the last 18 months to rearrange themselves into something that made him look less foolish. Stellan kept talking, warm and animated, and absolutely unaware, or politely uninterested in the fact that every sentence landing at that table was detonating in real time. "We're aligned on structure," he said. "Big number. Clean deal. Investors are thrilled. And frankly, after what you built the first time, nobody's questioning your instincts." He paused, then added with the kind of casual reverence only truly powerful people get away with. "Building once is rare. Building twice with this kind of appetite is rarer. Silence. Complete silence. Not party silence. Not polite silence. Shock silence. Mira's mouth parted slightly. Talia actually blinked like she had something in her eye. And Adrian's expression changed in layers so fast it was almost painful to witness. First confusion, then disbelief, then embarrassment, then calculation, and finally something worse than all of them put together. Recognition. Not of me, of value. He was looking at me the way people look at an opportunity they almost dismissed right before everyone else realized what it was worth. I kept my face neutral. Stellan gestured toward one of the men behind him. I was just telling Greg and Owen that if this launch lands the way I think it will, every outlet in the city will want a quote from you by spring. And I told them, good luck getting Sienna to do anything she doesn't think matters. A few people nearby laughed politely. Somebody farther back had clearly started recording. I could see it from the glow of a phone lifted near the bar. Let's talk next week, I said quietly. Somewhere less theatrical. That made Stellan grin. Fair, but I'm holding you to it. He lowered his voice just enough to make it feel personal, not secretive. And for what it's worth, I'm glad to see you out doing something normal for once. Every time I talk to you, you sound like you've been working for 6 straight days. I probably have. That, he said, pointing at me like he'd won a bet, is exactly why you're dangerous. He squeezed my shoulder once more, nodded to the table, then moved on toward the private room at the back of the restaurant with his group orbiting after him. And just like that, he was gone. But the damage stayed. No one at our table knew where to look. Not at me, not at each other, not at the floor. Talia recovered first, because women like her usually do. They survive humiliation by pretending they were in on the joke the whole time. Oh my God, she said, letting out a breathless laugh. Sienna, why would you never mention any of that? I turned to her slowly. There are moments in life when anger burns so hot it clarifies into stillness. This was one of them. Mention what? I asked. Her face twitched. The company, the exit, She made a vague motion with both hands, as if my entire life could be summarized with expensive air. All of it. Mira was already recalibrating. That is actually insane, she said. Like, in a good way. I mean, wow. You totally don't come across like, Like what? I asked again. Neither of them answered. Of course they didn't. Because the word sitting at the center of all their assumptions was beneath them, only now that they knew it had been inaccurate. Adrian stepped closer to me then, his hand brushing my elbow with sudden proprietary familiarity. It made my skin go cold. Sienna, he said softly, can we talk for a second? His voice had changed. That was what I noticed before anything else. The sharpness was gone, the social edge, the embarrassed distance. Now he sounded gentle, careful, almost reverent. I looked at him and saw the transformation happening in real time. The same man who had let them laugh at me was now terrified of losing access to what I represented. Not because he understood what he had done, because he finally understood what he thought I was worth. We are talking, I said. He swallowed. No, I mean privately. Talia jumped in too quickly. Adrian, oh my God, she probably feels weird right now. Sienna, seriously, if I came off harsh before, that was just our humor. We all tease each other. I almost smiled. It was such a practice sentence. The kind people use when cruelty fails, and they need to rename it before anyone makes them wear it honestly. Is that what that was? I asked. Her cheeks flushed. Mira folded her arms, then immediately unfolded them again. Come on, nobody meant anything by it. That was when Adrian made his worst mistake of the night. He laughed softly and said, Baby, you know how they are. Baby. He had not called me that once the entire evening. Not on the ride over. Not when they mocked my clothes. Not when he called me sweet, like I was an underqualified applicant for my own relationship. But now, suddenly, I was baby. Something inside me closed like a locked door. I took a small step back so his hand slipped away from my arm. No, I said. Actually, I know exactly how they are. His face fell. Around us, people were pretending not to listen, which meant they were listening more carefully than anyone. Adrian lowered his voice. Can you not do this here? I looked at him for a long moment. The answer that rose in my throat was sharp enough to wound, but I didn't want drama. Drama would let him frame this as a misunderstanding. Something mutual. What happened wasn't mutual. He had watched me be humiliated and decided it was socially useful. So I said the quietest thing I could. I'm not the one who did this here. That landed. I saw it in the way his expression tightened. Talia looked away. Mira suddenly became fascinated by the stem of her champagne glass. Adrian steadied himself and tried again. Sienna, please, I didn't know. There it was. The defense. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I shouldn't have let them talk to you like that. Just, I didn't know. as if the insult would have been acceptable if their estimate of my net worth had been correct. I stared at him. You didn't know what? I asked. That I mattered? His mouth opened. Closed. No answer. Because he understood enough to realize there was no version of that sentence he could survive. Noise from the rest of the restaurant drifted back into awareness. Glass clinking. Laughter from another table. A server passing with small plates. Everything looked normal. Nothing was normal. Adrian tried again, softer now. Can we just reset, please? Reset. As if respect were a setting. As if he could mock the woman he loved at 8:17 and be proud of her by 8:23 and call that growth. I studied his face and realized something that hurt almost as much as the betrayal. He genuinely thought the problem had started when Stellan spoke. Not when he did. That told me more than any apology could have. Talia, apparently unable to tolerate silence, leaned forward and forced brightness back into her tone. So what exactly are you working on now? She asked. Because that partnership sounds huge. Mira nodded quickly. And how long have you known Stellan? There it was. The pivot. 10 minutes earlier, I had been a cautionary tale in thrifted clothes. Now I was an introduction they hoped to leverage before dessert. I should have been furious. Instead, what I felt was stranger. Grief. Not exactly for the relationship. That grief had started in the Uber when Adrian told me to fit in. This was grief for the illusion. For the woman I had been an hour earlier, standing beside my boyfriend in a restaurant full of polished strangers, still believing she was loved in a way that had nothing to do with optics. That woman was gone now, and no amount of money could buy her back. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Adrian frowned immediately. What are you doing? Going home. Sienna, no. He stepped in front of me. Don't leave like this. Like what? He glanced around, aware of eyes. Upset. I nearly laughed. Upset. Such a small word for what was sitting between us. Talia reached out as if we were suddenly close enough for physical reassurance. Seriously, stay. Everyone wants to meet you now. And that more than anything else made my decision effortless. Everyone wants to meet you now. Not before. Not when I was just a woman in a thrifted jacket holding a drink while my boyfriend's friends stripped her down for sport. Now. I looked at her hand until she withdrew it. Then I turned back to Adrian. His confidence had ruptured, his posture reorganized around fear. For 1 weak second, I saw the version of him I had loved. The man on my couch in sweatpants. The man who kissed my forehead in grocery store lines. Then I remembered him smiling when they asked why I dressed like a broke intern. That was the real correction. Not Stellan's arrival. Mine. I need air, I said. Sienna, please, let me come with you. No. It came out flat and final. I slipped past him before he could try again. As I crossed the restaurant, I could feel the attention follow me. Some curious, some sympathetic, some opportunistic. Outside, the cold air hit my face hard enough to feel cleansing. Seattle in December has a way of making even expensive streets feel quiet. The sidewalks shimmered from recent rain. Holiday lights reflected in puddles. My phone buzzed before I even reached the curb. Adrian. Then again. And again. I looked down. Where are you? Please don't do this. Can we talk? Then, after a pause, why didn't you tell me? I stared at that last one for a long time. Why didn't you tell me? Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Just shock, injury, entitlement. As though the worst thing that had happened that night was not his public betrayal, but his private exclusion from information he now believed he deserved. That was when I knew the party hadn't revealed a misunderstanding. It had revealed a value system. And I was standing outside in the cold, realizing I could not build a future with a man who only saw my worth once another man announced it to the room. I raised my hand for a car. Behind me, the restaurant glowed warm and golden and full of people who suddenly wanted access to me. For the first time all night, I felt absolutely certain of one thing. I was done pretending I hadn't just seen the truth. The breakup itself was quiet. No screaming. No dramatic scenes. Just distance. Adrian had already told his friends about me. About the startup, about the deal Stellan mentioned, about the story of dating a secret tech millionaire. For a short while, that story gave him status in their circle. When we broke up, that currency disappeared, and the same people who had mocked me before the reveal returned to doing what they did best. Measuring, comparing, judging. Only this time, Adrian was the one standing in the wrong column. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances. Little comments, small shifts. The same subtle cruelties that had once been aimed at me. I didn't feel satisfied hearing about it. Mostly I felt tired, because nobody deserves to be reduced to their social utility. Not even the person who once reduced me to mine. Professionally, things moved quickly. The partnership with Stellan's company launched 3 months later. The platform performed better than expected. Press interviews followed. Panels, articles, conversations with investors. From the outside, it probably looked like the year I finally arrived. But the strangest truth was this: none of those things felt as significant as the quiet moments that came afterward. Because once you see how easily money can distort how people treat you, you start paying attention to the ones who don't care. And a few months later, I started noticing someone who didn't. His name was Daniel Reyes, a third-grade teacher at the elementary school where I volunteered every Tuesday. He knew I worked in tech. That was all. Not about the startup. Not about the exit. Not about the Christmas party. Just tech. And nothing about his behavior changed depending on what he assumed my income might be. Because unlike Adrian's social circle, Daniel wasn't measuring anything. Weeks passed. Then months. We kept volunteering. Kept grabbing coffee. Sometimes we stayed late helping kids finish small coding projects. One afternoon, a student named Mateo spent 20 minutes trying to debug a line that kept crashing his program. Daniel crouched beside him patiently. "Why do you think it broke?" Mateo shrugged. "I don't know." Daniel pointed to the screen. "What does the error message say?" Mateo squinted. "Something about missing brackets." Daniel smiled. "So what might that mean?" Watching that interaction felt strangely grounding. Because patience like that isn't performative. It's habit. It's character. After the session ended that day, Daniel and I walked outside together. The sky had started turning orange over the buildings across the street. "You're really good with them," I told him. He shrugged. "They're easier than adults." "Why?" "They're honest." That answer stayed with me longer than I expected. Because he wasn't wrong. Kids don't pretend to value things they don't. Adults often build entire social structures around doing exactly that. Months later, one of Daniel's students ran into the computer lab waving a newspaper clipping. "Sienna, you're in the news." There it was, an article about emerging tech founders in Seattle. My name, my company, a photo from a conference panel months earlier. After the kids left, Daniel looked at the article, then at me. "So, should I be congratulating you?" I leaned against a desk and sighed. "Probably." He studied the paper. "You built a company that sold for $40 million? Something like that. And now you're building another one?" "Yes." Daniel folded the article and handed it back. "That explains a few things." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "You ask questions like someone who has built systems before." That was it. No sudden change in tone. No interrogation about money. Just a practical observation. I watched him for a moment. "You're not surprised?" "Sure I am," he said. "But it doesn't change the fact that you still spent 2 hours helping Mateo fix a missing bracket." I couldn't help smiling. "And that's the part that matters to you?" "That's the part I've actually seen." And in that moment, I realized something simple. Adrian had wanted a woman who made him look successful. Daniel loved the woman who simply showed up. The first man had been embarrassed by the ordinary version of me. The second man fell in love with her. And that difference was everything.